On this day, in 1924, dozens of firemen were fighting an almost uncontrollable fire, as well as fighting for their lives, at Musgrave Wharf where current-day South Bank now exists. Over the space of 18 hours, every ounce of their lives and skill would be put to the ultimate test, with ever-present risk that an explosion of monumental proportions could destroy one of Brisbane's major ports. Over 2 weeks earlier, the massive 6,000-ton steamer, Kansas, had docked at South Brisbane, carrying 900 complete motor cars, 1,200 tons of ready-to-assemble Ford automobiles in crates, countless pallets of general cargo, and over 9,000 cases of oil. At the time, she was claimed to be carrying the largest number of motor cars ever shipped aboard a single vessel from the port of New York. Being an oil-burning steamer, she held a further 400 tons of oil in her fuel tanks. During her voyage to Australia from New York, the Kansas had already suffered from 2 minor disasters. Whilst at sea, the engine bed plate, the engine's solid mounting, broke away and was hastily rigged on the run to survive the remaining journey to Brisbane for repair. Once docked and discharging her cargo, one of the masts buckled under the strain and was rendered useless. However, the worst disaster facing the ship would take place in the early hours of the morning on the 6th of April. Whilst the crew slept and a skeleton crew watched over the vessel, a wayward spark ignited the waste oil contained in the ship's bilge. Discovered by a night watchman, the captain and crew were immediately aroused from their sleep and fire hoses were trained on the blaze. However, by the time the firefighting efforts were underway, the entire engine room and stores room was ablaze. Realising the fire was far bigger than the crew could adequately fight, the South Brisbane Fire Brigade was summoned to aid in the effort, and by 3 AM it had been extinguished, or so they thought. Within hours, as oil blazes have a tendency to do, the fire reignited and spread into the cargo holds. Number 4 hold was the first to catch alight as the fire tore through the cargo of cars and pianos, followed by number 5 hold, which was stacked with general cargo. Returning to the scene, the fire brigade realised that their only option to fight the blaze involved cutting large holes into the hull of the vessel with oxyacetylene torches, through which the nearby tug Coringa could train her massive hoses. Realising the fire was heading for the 9,000 cases of oil, the captain immediately turned on the ship's pumps, flooding the bilge and lower cargo holds with thousands of tons of water from the Brisbane River. As a result, much of the ship's cargo was flooded and the vessel's stern sank a further 8 feet, nearly 3 metres, into the Brisbane River. By nightfall, the conflagration was finally under control, and all who had fought throughout the day to avoid a massive explosion found a spot to sit and reflect on Musgrave Wharf. As a result of the fire aboard the Kansas, a court of marine inquiry was held. Utilising a recently passed Commonwealth Act, the Kansas disaster granted the very first opportunity for the newly formed Marine Court to test their mettle in examining a maritime disaster. As a result of the subsequent inquiry, the Marine Court determined that the fire was not due to negligence, despite evidence that the crew members clearing the firebox may have accidentally dumped burning embers downwards towards the highly flammable oil bunkers below, potentially igniting gas in the holds. All in all, it was a miracle the ship's oil bunkers had not caught fire, which would have resulted in a monumental explosion that would have levelled a considerable area at South Brisbane, with similar destruction along the river's northern bank in the city. Sadly, the cargo of cars, pianos, typewriters and lanterns were not so lucky.